All right, and we're back for video part 5, or 6 now. Disaster recovery planning, business continuity planning. This is on the exam. If you run a business, you need to plan for events such as power outages, floods, and earthquakes or terrorist attacks that will prevent your IS and your business from operating. Disaster recovery planning, which is on the exam, devises plans for the restoration of computing and communication services after they have been disrupted. Disaster recovery plans focus primarily on the technical issues involved in keeping systems up and running, such as which files to back up and the maintenance of backup computer systems or disaster recovery services. For example, MasterCard maintains a duplicate computer center in Kansas City, Missouri, to serve as an emergency backup to its primary computer center in St. Louis. Rather than build their own backup facilities, many firms contract with disaster recovery firms, such as Comdisco Disaster Recovery Services, SunGuard Availability Services. These disaster recovery firms provide hot sites housing spare computers at locations around the country where subscribing firms can run their critical applications in an emergency. Okay? Business continuity planning focuses on how the company can restore business operations after disaster strikes. So the business continuity plan, which is on the exam, identifies critical business processes and determines the action plans for handling mission critical functions if systems go down. For example, Deutsche Bank, which provides investment banking and asset management services in 74 different countries, has a well-developed business continuity plan that it continually updates and refines. It maintains full-time teams in Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, India, and Australia to coordinate plans addressing loss of facilities, personnel, or critical systems so that the company can continue to operate when a catastrophic event occurs. All right, so Deutsche Bank distinguishes between processes critical for business survival and those critical to crisis support and is coordinated with the company's disaster recovery planning for its computer center. IS systems, information systems audit, which is on the exam, or on page 17. How does management know that information system security and controls are effective? To answer that question, organizations must conduct comprehensive and systematic audits. An IS audit examines the firm's overall security environment as well as controls governing the individual information systems. The auditor should trace the flow of sample transactions to the system and perform tests using, if appropriate, automated audit software. The IS audit may also examine data quality. Security audits review technologies, procedures, documentation, training, and personnel. A thorough audit will even simulate an attack or disaster to test the response of the technology, information system staff, and business employees. So that is on the exam. Ethics. Information rights, page 128. The information rights and obligation. What information rights is individuals and organization possess with respect to themselves? What can they protect? So this is a key thing here, what we want to take a look at. How will property rights and obligations is how will traditional intellectual property rights be protected in a digital society in which tracing and accounting for ownership are difficult and ignoring such property rights is so easy. Accountability and control. Who can and will be held accountable, liable for the harm done to individual and collective information and property rights. System qualities. What standards of data and system quality should we demand to protect individual rights and the safety of the society? Quality of life. What values should be preserved in an information and knowledge-based society? What institutions should we protect from violation? What cultural values and practices are supported by the new information technology? So you're going to have to review profiling and information rights. NORA, which is on the exam, is a new data analysis technology called non-obvious relationship awareness. It's given the government and private sector even more powerful profiling capabilities. NORA can take information about people from many disparate sources, such as employment applications, telephone records, customer listings, and wanted lists, and correlate relationships to find obscure hidden connections that might help identify criminals or terrorists. NORA is a very interesting thing here. For example, an applicant for a job at a casino shares a telephone number with a known criminal and is issue an alert to the hiring manager. NOR technology scans data and extracts info as the data is being generated so that it could, for example, instantly discover a man at an airline ticket counter who shares a phone number with a known terrorist before that person boards an airplane. The technology is considered a valuable tool for Homeland Security, but does have privacy implications because it can provide such a detailed profile of the activities and associations of a single individual. So it's a detailed picture, actually. All right, so golden rule, categorical imperatives is on the exam. Do unto as you would have them do unto you is the golden rules. Putting yourself into the place of others and thinking of yourself as the object of the decision. Can you help think about a fairness in decision making? Can help you think about fairness in decision making. If an action is not right for everyone to take, it is not right for anyone at all, which is Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, which is on the exam. Ask yourself, if everyone did this, could the organization or society survive? That is on the exam. If an action cannot be taken repeatedly, it is not right to take it at all. That is the slippery slope rule. An action may bring about a small change now that is acceptable, but if it was repeated, it would bring unacceptable changes in the long run. In the vernacular, it might be stated as, once started down a slippery path, you may not be able to stop at all. The utilitarian principle, risk aversion principle, and no free lunch rule, which is on the exam. Take the action that achieves the higher or greater value. Utilitarian principle. This rule assumes you can prioritize values in a rank order and understand the consequences of various courses of action. Take the action that produces the least harm or the least potential costs. Risk aversion principle, which is on the exam. Some actions have extremely high failure costs of very low probability, building nuclear generating facilities in an urban area, or extremely high failure costs of moderate probability, speeding and automobile accidents. Avoid these high failure cost actions, paying greater attention to high failure cost potential of moderate to high probability. So that's the risk aversion principle. Assume that the virtuality of all tangible, intangible objects are owned by someone else unless there is a specific declaration otherwise. This is the ethical no free lunch rule. If something someone else has created is useful for you, it has value, you should assume the creator wants compensation for this work. Okay. Fair information practices. Now we're on page 19. Most Americans and European privacy laws based on a regime called Fair Information Practices, which is on the exam, FTP, first set forth in a report written by 1973 Federal Government Advisory Committee and updated most recently in 2010 to take into account new privacy invading technology. The Fair Information Practices, which is on the exam, is a set of principles governing the collection and use of information about individuals. The FIP principles are based on the notion of mutuality of interest between the record holder and the individual. The individual has an interest in engaging in a transaction, and the record keeper, usually a business or government agency, requires information about the individual to support the transaction. Once information is gathered, the individual maintains an interest in the record, and the record may not be used to support other activities without the individual's consent. In 1998, they reinstated it. Okay? And now we're moving on to spyware. And spyware is on the exam. It can secretly install itself on internet users' computer by piggybacking on larger applications. Once installed, the spyware calls out to websites to send banner ads and other unsolicited material to the user, and it could report user movements on the internet to other computers. More information is available about the intrusive software in Chapter 8. Opt-out model or opt-in model is on the exam. An opt-out model of informed consent permits the collection of personal information until the consumer specifically requests that the data not be collected. Privacy advocates would like to see wider use of an opt-in model of information consent, which is a business is prohibited from collecting any personal information unless the consumer specifically takes action to approve information collection and use. Here, the default option is no collection of user information. Okay. Oleska to intellectual property. Contemporary information systems have severely challenged existing laws and social practices that protect private intellectual property, which is on the exam. Intellectual property is considered to be intangible property created by individuals or corporations. IT has made it difficult to protect intellectual property because computerized information can be so easily copied or distributed on networks. Intellectual property is subject to a variety of protections under three different legal traditions: trade secrets, copyright, and patent law, which are all on the exam. A trade secret: any intellectual work, product, formula, device, pattern, or compilation of data used for a business purpose is classified as trade secret, provided it is not based on information in the public domain. Protections for trade secrets vary from state to state. In general, trade secret laws grant a monopoly on the ideas behind a work product, but it can be very tenuous monopoly. Okay? Copyright is a statutory grant that protects creators of intellectual property from having their work copied by others for any purpose during the life of the author, plus an additional 70 years after the author's death. For copyright-owned works, copyright protection lasts for 95 years after the initial creation. Congress has extended copyright protections to books, periodicals, lectures, dramas, musical compositions, maps, drawings, artwork of any kind, and motion pictures. The intent behind copyright laws has been to encourage creativity and authorship by ensuring that the creative people receive the financial and other benefits of their work. Most industry nations have their own copyright laws, and there are several intentional or international conventions and bilateral agreements through which nations coordinate and enforce their laws. Patents. Patents grant the owner an exclusive monopoly on the ideas behind an invention for 20 years. The congressional intent behind the patent law was to ensure inventors of new machines, devices, and methods receive the full financial and other words of their labor, and yet make widespread use of invention possible by providing detailed diagrams for those wishing to use the idea under license from the patent's owner. Grant of a patent is determined by the United States Patent and Trade Office and relies on court ruling. Alright, so now we're on page 20, global systems. The business driver. A business driver is a force in the environment to which businesses must respond and that influences the direction of the business. Likewise, examine carefully the inhibitors of negative factors that create management challenges. Business drivers on the exam. Factors that can scuttle the development of a business. Okay? Global culture, which is on the exam, created by television, internet, and other globally shared media, such as movies, now permits different cultures and people to develop common expectations about right and wrong, desirable, undesirable, heroic, or cowardly. The collapse of the Eastern Bloc has accelerated the growth of a world culture enormously, increased support of capitalism and business, and reduced level of cultural conflict in Europe considerably. Particularism is on the exam, is at a cultural level making judgments and taking actions on the basis of a narrow or personal characteristics in all its forms: religious, nationalistic, ethnic, regionalism, geopolitical position, rejects the very concept of a shared global culture, and rejects the penetration of domestic markets by foreign goods and services. Okay. Now we're moving on to transporter data. Europeans have very strict laws concerning transporter data flow and privacy. It's defined as the movement of information across international boundaries in any form. Some European countries prohibit the process of financial information outside their boundaries or the movement of personal information to foreign countries. Domestic exporter is on the exam. It is a strategy characterized by heavy centralization of corporate activities in the home country of origin. Nearly all international companies begin this way, and some move on to other forms. Okay, so you're going to have to review that one again. The multinational strategy concentrates on financial management and control out of central home base while decentralizing production, sales, marketing operations and units to other countries. That's going to be on the exam. Franchisers are an interesting mix of old and new. On the other hand, the products created, designed, financially, and initially produced in the home country, but for product-specific reasons, they must rely heavily on foreign personnel for further production, marketing, and human resources. So that is on the exam. And then we have transnational, which is on the exam. This strategy is nearly all the value-adding activities are managed from a global perspective without reference to national border, optimizing sources of supply and demand wherever they appear and taking advantage of local competitive advantages. Okay.